Picture a cafe in 1920s Berlin. It is like incredibly loud. You have the clinking of heavy glass steins, the thick clouds of cigarette smoke, people just arguing over politics and philosophy.
Oh yeah, just total sensory overload.
Exactly. And sitting in the corner are two psychologists, Kurt Lewin and his student, Bluma Zeigarnik. But they aren't looking at their notes or anything.
No, they're completely mesmerized by the waiter.
Right, because they're watching this absolute marvel of human cognition.
Yeah, these waiters were weaving through this chaotic, noisy environment, taking massive, incredibly complex orders from large tables of patrons.
We're talking multiple drinks, specific food modifications, different courses arriving at totally different times.
And they were doing all of this without writing a single thing down.
Nothing. Like no notepads, no shorthand, just pure memory.
Right.
And they were recalling these massive orders with absolute flawless precision when they went back to the kitchen and delivered the food. It's like a cognitive superpower unfolding right in front of them.
I mean, it completely defied what these two researchers understood about the limits of human working memory at the time. Like, how were these waiters holding on to so much intricate data without dropping a single detail?
But then comes the jarring plot twist. This is the thing that absolutely blew Zeigarnik's mind. The very second the patron pays the bill, the waiter's memory of the entire order instantly and completely evaporates.
Just proof.
It's gone. If you ask that same waiter 5 minutes later what the table had ordered, they would draw a complete blank.
Which is such a bizarre phenomenon when you really analyze it. I mean, the data was clearly encoded in their brains securely enough to survive the chaos of the cafe, but the moment the financial transaction was completed, the mental file was just permanently deleted.
Right.
And this observation actually led them to develop what is known in Gestalt field theory as the quasi-need theory.
Let's pause on that because Gestalt field theory isn't exactly something most people think about every day. That's the school of psychology suggesting our brains perceive things as whole patterns rather than just a collection of separate parts, right?
Yeah, that is the foundation, exactly. Gestalt theorists believe that when a pattern or a task is incomplete, it creates a literal disruption in your psychological field.
A disruption.
Right. So the theory suggests that the moment you commit to starting a task, you create a biological psychic tension inside the brain.
Like an itch.
It is literally a cognitive itch that demands scratching, and that psychic tension acts as a quasi-need.
Meaning it isn't a biological need like, food, water, or sleep, but our brains treat it with the exact same level of urgency.
Precisely. That tension keeps the memory of the task highly active and alive. It basically forces your attentional resources to hover around it until closure is achieved.
So the moment the waiter gets paid.
The tension discharges, the quasi-need is met, and the memory gets flushed.
Which sparks this massive, excited debate between Zeigarnik and Lewin, and it leads to a classic 1927 experiment that reveals a profound implication.
A huge one.
Our human brains are literally hardwired to prioritize unfinished business over our actual successes and completions. Like, we do not hold on to our victories. We hold on to our unresolved loose ends.
It is entirely counterintuitive. I mean, you'd think evolution would want us to deeply remember our successes, right? Like our completed goals, to build a sense of achievement and confidence.
You'd think so.
But instead, our cognitive architecture is designed to constantly nag us about what we haven't finished yet.
Welcome to Deep Cuts and Deep Thinking. In today's deep dive, we are taking a massive stack of research on this very phenomenon, the Zeigarnik Effect.
It's a great topic.
It really is. Our mission today is to explore for you exactly how this biological quirk works, how the world we are living in now weaponizes this psychological tension against us, and most importantly, how you can hack your own biology to turn chronic procrastination and mental exhaustion into laser-focused productivity.
It really is a fascinating journey from those theoretical observations in the 1920s straight into the modern neurobiology of why this psychic tension actually occurs inside our heads today.
Okay, let's unpack this. It sounds like the brain's working memory is exactly like a computer with way too many background applications open. Even if you aren't actively using them, they are silently eating up all your RAM.
That is a perfect analogy. And to understand why your brain is eating up that RAM, we have to look at the prefrontal cortex.
Right.
This is the area of your brain just behind your forehead, responsible for executive function. When you start a task, your prefrontal cortex creates a mental representation of that goal.
I was tracking it.
Yeah. It acts as a literal mental bookmark, maintaining active tabs on all your pending tasks.
So like every unwritten email, every half-finished project, every awkward conversation you walked away from, they all get a bookmark. But what is physically keeping those bookmarks open?
Dopamine.
Dopamine.
Yeah, we often think of dopamine simply as the reward chemical, the hit of pleasure we get when we finish something or eat something delicious. But neuroscientists now understand that dopamine is primarily a goal-tracking neurotransmitter. When a task is unfinished, the dopaminergic payoff is intentionally withheld by your brain.
Wait, so my brain is basically holding my own neurochemistry hostage.
Basically, yeah.
It knows I want the dopamine, but it refuses to release it until I finish the spreadsheet.
Exactly. It is a biological mechanism designed to make you uncomfortable enough to go finish the job. By withholding that dopamine, the brain keeps you in a state of subthreshold stress and anticipation.
Wow.
It is a brilliant survival mechanism if you are hunting or foraging, but highly problematic for office work. And the system that enforces this discomfort is called the default mode network, or the DMN.
DMN. I know this network activates when we are supposedly resting, right? Like when we are staring at a window, taking a shower, or lying in bed.
Right. When your active, conscious focus powers down, the default mode network powers up. Its primary job is to wander, reflect, and consolidate memories.
Okay.
But because of those bookmarks in the prefrontal cortex, the DMN constantly retrieves those unresolved goals. It scans your mental environment and says, hey, we still have this quasi-need.
Oh man, so this is the exact mechanism that causes you to suddenly remember a highly stressful work email right at midnight when you were trying to fall asleep.
Yes. Your DMN is pinging those open loops because the tension hasn't been discharged.
Man. So if our cognitive RAM is maxed out by these unfinished tasks constantly pinging us, what is the physical breaking point? I mean, we are living in a modern workflow environment that practically demands we constantly switch between incomplete tasks all day long. Do we just burn out, or does our body force us to act on it?
Well, the breaking point comes in the form of depleted working memory. Organizational psychologist Sophie Leroy has done vital research on this, introducing the concept of attention residue.
Attention residue.
Yeah. When you are working on task A and you get interrupted or suddenly switch to task B without finishing task A, a cognitive footprint is left behind.
So I might physically turn my chair around to answer a coworker's question, but my brain is still partially facing my computer screen.
Exactly. A significant portion of your cognitive resources remains stuck on the unfinished task. Leroy's research shows that this severely depletes your working memory capacity.
Yikes.
And because your brain is maintaining that subthreshold stress, it keeps your cortisol levels, your primary stress hormone, chronically elevated. It is public enemy number one for our focus.
So you are sitting at a desk, theoretically safe, but your body is pumping stress hormones like you are in physical danger just because you have 5 tabs open and a half-written report?
Essentially, yes.
But wait, isn't multitasking just a required survival skill in today's world? Surely if we practice enough, we can expand our ability to juggle these things and ignore the background noise.
That is the great modern myth.
Really?
Yeah. The biology of the prefrontal cortex strictly limits this bandwidth. You cannot train your brain to hold infinite open loops without generating stress. The working memory has a hard biological cap.
Okay.
When you force it to hold multiple unclosed tension systems, you aren't training it. You are just degrading your fluid intelligence.
And fluid intelligence meaning our ability to solve new problems and adapt to novel situations, right? As opposed to crystallized intelligence, which is just recalling facts we already know.
Yes. Your ability to think on your feet, to reason through a new problem, plummets when you have a tension residue clogging up the system. What's fascinating here is that this leads us to a secondary discovery, known as the Ovsiankina Effect.
Okay, what is that?
It's named after Maria Ricker's Ovsiankina, who is actually a colleague of Zeigarnik. While the Zeigarnik Effect focuses on how we remember unfinished tasks, the Ovsiankina Effect focuses on our intense behavioral drive to resume those interrupted tasks.
So it's not just a memory issue, it's a physical compulsion.
A massive one. Her study showed a 67% to 100% resumption rate.
Wow.
Yeah. If people are interrupted and then left to their own devices, they will almost always spontaneously return to the incomplete task just to discharge that tension.
That's crazy.
What is crucial to understand is that the chronic burnout so many people experience today isn't always from doing too much physical or mental labor. It frequently stems from the ambient neuroendocrine stress of carrying too many open loops. Your brain is exhausted from holding the tension, not from doing the actual work.
Wait, if this biological drive to finish things is so overpowering and our brains are stubbornly tracking every open loop and burning cortisol to do it, why do we sometimes completely forget the things we are actually supposed to do?
Right.
Like, I will be the first to admit, I have definitely completely forgotten a major project I left half done. If my brain wants closure so badly, why does it let me forget?
That is the great paradox in the literature. The early 1920s experiments in that Berlin cafe showed a massive memory advantage for interrupted tasks. But modern science has found a much more nuanced reality. A massive modern meta-analysis by researchers Ghibellini and Meyer looked at decades of data on this topic.
Don't tell me Zeigarnik was wrong all along.
Not wrong, but the effect is highly conditional. They revealed that when excluding Zeigarnik's original beta, the conscious memory advantage for interrupted tasks drops to a negligible 9%.
9%. That is barely a blip compared to what those cafe observations implied. Why such a huge drop?
Well, the researchers discovered strict boundary conditions for when the brain chooses to remember an open loop. And the most fascinating one is called ego threat.
Ego threat.
Yeah, if failing to finish a task makes us feel bad about ourselves, like if it threatens our self-esteem or makes us feel incompetent, the memory effect frequently inverts entirely.
So my brain acts like a bad middle manager. If a project is going poorly and makes me look bad, it just sweeps it under the rug and pretends it never existed.
Exactly. Your brain actively represses the memory of the unfinished task to protect your ego. The cognitive tension collapses because the brain decides the psychological pain of the failure is far worse than the itch of incompletion.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Our conscious memory of these unfinished tasks might be incredibly fragile and highly context dependent. If we feel threatened, we forget it. But our behavioral drive to resolve visual and psychological gaps remains incredibly robust, regardless of our ego. I'm guessing that applies to things we don't have a personal emotional stake in.
That is perfectly demonstrated by what researchers call the visual Zeigarnik Effect.
Oh, what's that?
They ran experiments where people watched animations of paths unfolding through mazes on a screen. Sometimes the path reached the end, sometimes it stopped short, leaving the path visually unfinished.
Okay.
They then flashed targets along the path and tested how well people remembered their spatial locations.
Let me guess, the interrupted paths were much easier to remember.
Significantly better. And here is the kicker. They proved this prioritization happens at a precognitive visual level.
Precognitive.
Yeah, they even used traceless moving dots to eliminate simple visual lines. There was no actual line drawn on the screen, just a dot moving in a pattern. The visual system spontaneously segments these continuous inputs and privileges the details of ongoing incomplete visual narratives.
Wow.
This happens completely independently of our egos or our social motivations. Your visual cortex literally demands closure.
So our eyes and our baseline perceptual systems demand closure. Even if our conscious ego is trying to hide from a task, we just inherently want to see the circle close.
Exactly.
And because this behavioral drive is so deeply hardwired into our biology, modern platforms have engineered ingenious ways to explicitly hijack our quasi-needs.
Oh, absolutely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the modern attention economy is built almost entirely on the architecture of cognitive incompletion. Narrative cliffhangers in streaming media are the most obvious example.
Oh, absolutely. You finish an episode, the screen cuts to black, right as the lead character is in terrible danger.
Yes.
You physically feel that psychic tension in your chest. You don't even want to stay awake, but you have to click next episode just to relieve the biological itch.
And it goes far beyond entertainment. Think about user experience design and gamification. Have you ever logged into a new app or a professional networking site, and there is a prominent progress bar at the top of the screen telling you your profile is 64% complete?
It drives me crazy. Like, I will spend 20 minutes hunting down a high-resolution headshot and listing out every one of my old jobs just to make the bar turn green and say 100%.
Right.
You aren't filling out your profile because you genuinely want to. You're doing it because a designer artificially implanted a psychic tension in your prefrontal cortex.
And that is known as the endowed progress effect. By showing you that you have already made progress, even if it was just by creating the basic account, they frame completeness as an active goal. They manufacture an open loop that causes psychological discomfort, driving you to invest effort to fill the visual gap.
It is brilliant, but it's also incredibly manipulative when you realize what's happening under the hood. It isn't just digital interfaces though, right? I think there's a fascinating mechanical example of this with ATMs.
Yes, the ATM redesign is a classic case study in harnessing this tension. Historically, people would put their card in, request their cash, take the cash, and walk away, leaving their bank cards right there in the machine.
Because getting the cash was the main goal. Once the cash dispensed, the tension discharged, and their memory of the card completely vanished. Just like the waiter's memory of the drink order evaporating the second the bill was paid.
Exactly. Banks lost millions dealing with abandoned cards. So they redesigned the machines to force you to take your card before the cash is dispensed. By withholding the cash, which is the primary goal, they intentionally keep the psychological loop open until the card is secure in your hand.
It's a great way to save people from themselves, but it does raise a question about where we draw the line in the products we use every day.
It highlights the ethical boundary in modern design. I mean, there is a fine line between designing a system that supports a user's genuine goals, like making sure they don't lose their bank card, and utilizing manipulative dark patterns that generate unnecessary anxiety just to keep users hooked on a scrolling feed.
Totally.
When you understand the biology of the Zeigarnik effect, you realize just how potent these design choices are.
Okay, so we're living in an environment that is explicitly designed to open cognitive loops in our brains all day long. The tension is everywhere. Since we cannot escape this environment, how do we actually take back control? Let's say I'm having a typical chaotic workday. I sit down at 9 a.m., I have a massive report I'm dreading, emails are piling up, and I don't even know where to begin. How do I systematically close these loops, or better yet, harness them for my own benefit?
Well, the good news is that we can absolutely hack this biology. If you are staring down that massive report at 9 a.m., the first strategy is the 5-minute rule. We talked about how procrastination is often about the dread of a massive task.
Yeah.
To overcome this, you deliberately open a loop. You commit to starting the dreaded task for just 5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes, because that lowers the initiation threshold so much that I can't really argue with it.
And once you start, even for 5 minutes, you trigger that Ovsiankina resumption drive we discussed. You have created a quasi-need. When you pause after 5 minutes, the discomfort of leaving it unfinished transforms into an intrinsic behavioral pull. Your brain will start pushing you to return to it.
So I've started the report, the loop is open, I'm actually making progress. But then at noon, my boss bursts into my office and demands I drop everything to help with an urgent client issue. Usually, that totally derails my focus for the rest of the day. How do I handle that forced task switching without burning out my working memory?
When you are interrupted, do not immediately switch tasks. Take exactly 60 seconds to write down exactly where you left off, what the current challenge is, and what your immediate next step will be when you return.
So I do a quick 60-second brain dump before I turn my chair to face my boss.
Yes. This unloads the active representation from your prefrontal cortex. It effectively tells your brain, hey, I have this handled, you can stop tracking it.
That makes a lot of sense.
This completely eliminates the attention residue, allowing you to give your full cognitive bandwidth to the interruption without burning cortisol all afternoon.
That is incredibly practical. But what about the massive list of things I know I won't get to today? I have a dozen loops that I simply cannot close by 6 p.m.
For those, you utilize the implementation plan, which is based on vital research by Mazzacampo and Baumeister. They found that you do not actually have to finish a task to turn off the tension system. Formulating a highly specific plan, defining exactly when, where, and how you will finish a task acts as a proxy completion.
So writing a vague due taxes on a sticky note doesn't help at all, but scheduling a calendar block that says, Tuesday at 3 p.m., sit at the kitchen table, open tax software, and upload W-2s actually calms the brain down.
Exactly. The brain's executive control systems accept that highly specific plan as a proxy for completion, tricking the brain into turning off the tension and freeing up your working memory. And finally, you can even use this effect to learn faster through spaced repetition.
Wait, using the tension to learn, like strategic interruption while studying.
Yeah. Instead of cramming until a topic is fully resolved, you pause your study session at a point of high engagement. By leaving the concept partially unresolved, you allow the default mode network and your subconscious to actively consolidate the information while you take a break.
So what does this all mean for the big picture of my life? Am I supposed to be rushing to finish absolutely everything, or am I supposed to strategically leave things half done?
Knowledge is most valuable when understood and applied. It means you must transition from reactive workflows to intentional incompletion. Protect your working memory by making plans for the unfinished, and use strategic pauses to fuel your momentum. You don't need to finish everything immediately, you just need to manage the tension.
Managing the tension, I like that.
And this raises an important question, something to really ponder as we wrap up. Consider how much of our chronic anxiety or even our sense of identity, feeling like a disorganized or perpetually stressed person, might simply be the cumulative weight of years of unresolved open loops, rather than actual permanent personality traits. You might not be an inherently anxious person. You might just have too many unwritten, ready-to-resume notes.
That is a massive paradigm shift. Take a second and think about it. What unfinished task in your life is currently creating the most cognitive tension for you? And what is the absolute smallest 5-minute step you can take today to open that loop and let your biology pull you forward?
Great question.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe.